Gerald Whitmore, a name whispered in elite circles, was known as much for his billions as for his biting sarcasm. With his silver-streaked hair and tailored tuxedos, he commanded attention at every gala, every boardroom, and every television appearance. But those who truly knew him, or at least tried to, were well aware that beneath his polished charm was a man who thrived on control, spectacle, and the occasional cruel joke. One such joke was about to take shape on a cloudy Friday morning. Atop the marble steps of the Whitmore estate, flanked by towering Corinthian columns and an iron-wrought gate worth more than most homes, Gerald stood with a crystal tumbler in hand, his gaze piercing the horizon. Inside, his assistants buzzed about, finalizing the guest list for his annual Champagne and Empire charity ball. "Add her," Gerald said suddenly, interrupting his assistant, Nancy, who was listing the CEOs confirmed to attend. "Add who, sir?" "The cleaning lady." "What's her name?" "The one from the downtown office. Tall, elegant even in a mop bucket. Speaks little." Nancy's eyebrows arched. "Are you referring to Miss Lanesha Carter?" "Yes, that's her." "Invite her. Officially. By name. And make it dramatic. Gold-foiled envelope, hand-delivered." "Sir." "Are you serious?" "Deadly. Let's see how she handles glitter." Lanesha Carter had worked for 3 years cleaning the Whitmore property's downtown skyscraper. She moved like she was walking through silk, her calm presence a contrast to the frantic corporate world around her. Despite her role, executives often paused around her, caught by an unexplainable aura, part humility, part quiet strength. So when she received a gold-foiled envelope, hand-delivered by a chauffeur in a 3-piece suit, her neighbors in Southside Bronx gathered like it was the Oscars. "You been invited to the Whitmore Gala?" her cousin Chanel asked, eyes wide. "Girl, that's not even in the same galaxy as us." Lanesha opened the envelope slowly. The calligraphy read, "Ms. Lanesha Carter, you are cordially invited to the annual Whitmore Champagne and Empire Gala. Formal attire required. Sincerely, Gerald Whitmore." She read it once, then again. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from something deeper. A whisper inside, "You belong." The week passed like a dream stitched in silk. Lanesha worked double shifts, not to impress Gerald, but to afford a custom gown. A seamstress in Harlem who owed Lanesha a favor took her measurements by candlelight. "You walking in there a queen, not no cleaner," the seamstress, Miss Hattie, had whispered. "They gon' talk. Make sure they talk good." Her gown was a masterpiece. Deep red velvet with a slit that kissed the thigh, hugging every graceful curve, neckline dipped just enough to frame the diamonds she would borrow from a friend in the choir. The night of the gala arrived. Limousines lined the block. Photographers flooded the marble stairs of the Whitmore estate, their lenses twitching at each new arrival. Billionaires, senators, socialites, the elite glittered like champagne. Inside, Gerald laughed among his peers, sipping from an aged bottle of something only 5 men in the world could afford. "She won't come," his friend Sebastian said, amused. "You're giving a woman a front-row ticket to her own humiliation." Gerald smirked. "That's what makes it art." The room hushed. Even before she entered, the energy shifted. Heels clicked on marble. Heads turned. And then she appeared. Lanesha Carter stepped into the ballroom like she had been born to do so. Her deep red gown shimmered under the chandeliers. Her posture was regal, her eyes calm but commanding. Conversations halted. Champagne flutes froze midair. Every woman measured her. Every man re-evaluated his wife. The millionaire's smug smile dissolved. Gerald, standing near the stage, stared, his mouth open. For the first time in a decade, he had nothing to say. Nancy whispered, "She looks extraordinary." Gerald's voice returned, barely. "She wasn't supposed to look like that." But she did. And the room was hers. Lanesha didn't search for him. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was a message. As she walked among the elite, guests whispered, some mocking, some reverent. One woman sneered, "Who let the help in?" but was quickly silenced by her husband's dumbstruck gaze. Gerald finally approached her, glass trembling slightly. "Miss Carter, you clean up well." She turned to him, serene. "I do everything well, Mr. Whitmore. You just never looked past my broom." With that, She walked away, and Gerald Whitmore, for the first time in years, was left without the upper hand. The moment Lanesha turned from Gerald, a spark lit the room. Not the kind that fades into silence, but the kind that spreads like fire through dry brush. Murmurs rippled from guest to guest, not in mockery, but in something much more dangerous to Gerald's world, curiosity. "Who is she?" whispered the wife of a senator. "That dress, it's couture, surely," murmured a fashion editor. "She carries herself like royalty," said a venture capitalist, absently tightening his tie. Lanesha drifted through the room with practiced grace, though her heart beat like a jazz drum. She wasn't here for revenge or validation. She came because she was invited, and that was enough. Her elegance came not from silk or diamonds, but from the years of silence she wore as armor, the books she read during her lunch breaks, and the prayers whispered during subway rides home. Gerald found himself unsettled. He'd expected laughter, maybe pity. He had invited her as a joke, an inside jab at the absurdity of mixing worlds. But instead, she had disarmed the evening, turned the joke into art, and placed herself not on a pedestal, but as a mirror to their hypocrisy. His peers drifted toward her one by one. Men with billion-dollar companies bowed politely. Women, guarded at first, found themselves studying her makeup, her jewelry, asking who styled her. Gerald stood frozen, glass in hand, watching his kingdom marvel at a woman he had once paid $12 an hour. At the back of the ballroom, Nancy, the assistant who had once questioned Gerald's motives, smiled quietly. She watched Lanesha maneuver the evening with grace and grit, never faking a smile, never bowing, never pretending to be what she wasn't. When she passed the grand piano, a soft voice called out, "Miss Carter, do you play?" Lanesha paused. It was the mayor's wife. The woman's voice held no mockery, only interest. Lanesha hesitated, then nodded. "A little. Would you? For us." A soft murmur of agreement floated through the crowd. Lanesha approached the piano, brushing the keys with familiar fingertips. She sat, took a breath, and began to play, something slow, haunting, the kind of melody that silences a room. Not flashy, not rehearsed, just beautiful. Tears welled in one woman's eyes. A young tech CEO muttered, "She's unreal." When the final note fell like a feather on marble, silence followed. And then, applause. Real. Raw. Loud. Gerald's jaw tightened. This was not how it was supposed to go. He cornered Nancy. How did she get here? Like this? Who gave her the dress? The training? Nancy looked him squarely in the eye. She didn't need anyone to make her shine, sir. She was already light. You just never bothered to look. He scowled. This was a mistake. No, Nancy replied, turning away. This was your reckoning. Later that evening, a gossip columnist slipped beside Lanesha. Miss Carter, who are you really? Lanesha met her gaze, calm. A woman. A worker. A student of life. And what do you do for a living? I clean buildings. But tonight, I polished a mirror. The journalist blinked, unsure how to interpret the answer. But it didn't matter. The quote would be the headline by morning. Across the room, Gerald watched her like a general watching a battlefield he thought he owned, only to realize the flags had changed hands. Outside, the press waited like wolves. When Lanesha stepped onto the grand steps of the estate, the flashes exploded like fireworks. She paused at the top, the red of her gown catching every light. Behind her, murmurs turned to chants, of her name, of her presence, of her power. Gerald followed a few steps behind. He meant to reclaim the spotlight. Instead, the cameras ignored him. For once, The world wasn't watching the billionaire. They were watching the cleaning lady who had shown up like a diva. By morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Asterisk, mysterious beauty steals spotlight at billionaire gala. Asterisk, asterisk, cleaning lady or queen. The woman who shook high society. Asterisk, asterisk, Gerald Whitmore upstaged by his own employee. Asterisk, Lanesha Carter had become a name. Not a spectacle. Not a symbol. A name. A story in her own right. For the first time, the cameras zoomed in on someone who had been overlooked her entire life. And she had given them nothing but grace. Back at the Whitmore Tower, things were different. Not visibly, at first. The suits still walked fast, the elevators still pinged, and Lanesha still arrived at 6:45 a.m. sharp. But when she walked into the lobby now, silence followed her. Not in mockery, in respect. Executives who once ignored her now nodded. Some tried to make conversation. Others watched, confused, as if wondering how they'd missed the diamond under their nose. Gerald didn't speak of the gala. Not publicly. Not even to his closest friends. But his actions said enough. At a Monday morning board meeting, he opened with an unusual sentence. This company must re-examine how we treat the invisible among us. He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. Nancy, seated to his left, offered the briefest of smiles. But for Lanesha, the most important moments were not the headlines or the handshakes. They came from home. From her nephew, who now told classmates that his aunt crashed a billionaire's party and stole the crown. From Miss Hattie, the seamstress, who had received 3 new commissions by Monday afternoon. From her neighbor, Mrs. Brown, who called her the Queen of the Bronx and meant every word. And from herself, when she looked in the mirror and no longer saw just a worker, but a woman who had stepped into the lion's den, unshaken. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From Gerald Whitmore. Miss Carter, I owe you an apology. And perhaps a thank you. What began as a joke revealed a truth I had long buried beneath ego and tradition. You showed the world, and me, what grace under scrutiny looks like. I would like to offer you a position on our board for community engagement. Your insight, presence, and dignity are qualities this company desperately needs. Sincerely, Gerald Whitmore. She read it twice, then set it aside. Not out of anger, but out of peace. She didn't need permission to matter. She didn't need a board seat to have a voice. She had already rewritten the rules. That Friday, Lanesha returned to her church choir, where she led the hymns with quiet power. When asked to share her experience, she simply said, "Sometimes God puts you in a room not to change you, but to change the room." The congregation stood, not in ceremony, in reverence. Her story inspired think pieces, interviews, documentaries. But Lanesha never became a celebrity. She remained who she always was, grounded, wise, proud. She didn't chase the light. She let the light find her. And everyone who had laughed had stopped laughing. Because the cleaning lady had come in as a joke. But she had left as a legend.